Welcome to our channel. And today, I'm asking you to do something difficult. Forget what you think you know about Pablo Escobar. Because today, I will tell you everything. From the very beginning to the very end. Not what Netflix told you. Not what the news told you. Not just the big headlines. But the full story. The small details. The real emotions. The true reasons. Why a poor boy from a broken town became the most powerful and dangerous drug lord in modern history. And why millions of people still talk about him, decades after his death. This is not just a story. This is a lesson about power, about fear, about ambition, about consequences. This is the story of a man who built his own kingdom and destroyed it with his own hands. But there's something even more important. While listening to this story, you will also improve your English, because I will speak slowly, clearly, and in very easy English, made specially for beginners. So this is not just entertainment. This is your English listening practice, your motivation, and your history lesson, all in one. So sit back, turn off all noise, and get ready for a journey so powerful. You will feel every second of it. Let's begin the story of Pablo Escobar. Part 1. The Boy Who Wanted Everything. The year was 1949. The place, a small town called Rio Negro in Colombia, a country in South America. Colombia was poor, full of violence. And in the middle of that chaos, a baby boy was born. His name was Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria. His family had nothing special. His father, Abel, was a simple farmer who worked with his hands in the hot sun. His mother, Hermilda, was a school teacher, soft-spoken, educated, but strict. They had 7 children, and Pablo was one of them. They didn't live in a nice home. There was no electricity most of the time. No clean water, no safety, just dust, noise, and fear. But even when he was a small child, Pablo's eyes were different. He didn't look sad like the other poor children. He looked like he was thinking. Pablo was not a genius. He was not the top student. But he had something stronger, a hunger for more. At school, he would listen, but not to the lessons. He watched the rich boys, their shoes, their watches, their bags. And one day, he whispered to his friend, "One day, I'll have more than all of them." He was only 10 years old, but the fire had already started. At that age, he began selling old stamps, cigarettes, and even fake lottery tickets. But the most shocking thing? He would go to the cemetery, steal the tombstones, clean them, and resell them to funeral homes. He used acid to remove the names from the stone, then carved new ones. He was a child, but he was already learning how to manipulate, steal, sell, and survive. His mother found out. She beat him, she screamed. But Pablo looked her in the eye and said, "One day you'll thank me." That day never came. But his journey had already begun. When Pablo was a teenager, the family moved to a larger city, Medellin. This city would later become famous across the world. Why? Because of him. In Medellin, Pablo saw both worlds. The beautiful, rich neighborhoods with cars, light, and music. And the dark, violent slums where children starved. He didn't want to study. He didn't want a slow job. He wanted power. So he dropped out of school and joined a group of small-time criminals. At first, they just stole cars and radios. Then they started stealing televisions, furniture, even guns. And Pablo made money fast, not just by stealing, but by organizing others. He became a leader, young, silent, and dangerous. In the early 1970s, something happened in Colombia. A new drug was becoming popular in America, Cocaine. It was white, it was addictive, and it could be sold for 10 times more in the US than in Colombia. Pablo saw the opportunity. He began working with small producers in the jungle. They would make cocaine in labs hidden in the mountains. Pablo would transport it. At first, it was simple. One suitcase, then two. Then planes full of cocaine. He used old runways. He paid airport staff. He bribed police, judges, soldiers, anyone who could stop him. And he paid them well. Very soon he was making hundreds of thousands of dollars every month. More than doctors, more than businessmen. And he was just 25 years old. But with money came danger. One day a policeman stopped a truck carrying cocaine. Pablo's men were arrested. He had two options. 1. Let it go, lose money, accept the risk. 2. Send a message. He chose number 2. That policeman was found dead the next morning, and a note was left on his chest. Don't touch my business. This was the first confirmed kill by Pablo Escobar. It would not be the last. In fact, it was only the beginning. By 1975, Pablo Escobar had created the Medellin Cartel, a powerful drug organization. He partnered with people like Gustavo Gaviria, his cousin and financial brain, Carlos Later, an airplane expert, Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, known as El Mexicano. Together, they created a system. Cocaine was made in hidden labs, loaded into small planes, flown into Florida and California, sold by dealers in U.S. cities. And the money? It came back in suitcases, millions and millions of dollars, every week. Soon they were making so much money that Pablo could not hide it. He began burying cash in the ground, in walls, in secret rooms. Rats ate about 10% of it every year, and he didn't care. He had more than he could count. By the late 1970s, Pablo Escobar was no longer just a criminal. He was now a king in the eyes of many. He gave food to the poor. He built schools and hospitals. He gave away houses to people living in the slums. He even built a neighborhood and called it Barrio Pablo Escobar. The poor called him El Patron, the boss, the Robin Hood of Medellin. But behind that smile, he was creating a machine of terror, money, and silence. If someone talked, they disappeared. If someone betrayed him, their family died too. And still the poor kissed his hands. This was the beginning. A poor boy from a forgotten town. Now the richest criminal on earth. But power has a price. And soon, the world would come for him. Part 2. The King of Cocaine. Pablo Escobar was no longer a thief, no longer just a smuggler. By 1980, he was becoming something far more dangerous. He was now a global businessman. But his business wasn't coffee, it wasn't oil, it was cocaine. And the world wanted more. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Pablo Escobar turned cocaine into a global industry. He made it faster, cheaper, and more powerful. But most importantly, he built a transport system that no one had ever seen before. He used small airplanes that flew under radar, boats that crossed oceans at night, submarines built by engineers, even mules, poor people who carried cocaine inside their bodies on planes. But the real secret? Pablo controlled the entire chain. He paid the farmers who grew coca leaves. He built the secret labs in the jungle. He managed the transport. He handled the money. No middlemen, no outsiders. Only his people, only his rules. And the system was perfect. By 1982, the Medellin Cartel controlled 80% of the world's cocaine supply. That's 4 out of every 5 bags of cocaine used in the world. Coming from Pablo. Now let's talk about money. Pablo Escobar became so rich that normal banks couldn't hold his cash. He made up to $60 million a day. That's $420 million every week. That's $1.7 billion every month. What did he do with all that money? He bought private airplanes, bought mansions all across Colombia, built his own private zoo filled with elephants, hippos, giraffes, and exotic birds, owned a private airport on his estate called Hacienda Nápoles, bought hundreds of luxury cars, gave away millions to the poor, buried cash in the jungle, in houses, and under the ground. He spent $2,500 a month just on rubber bands to hold the money. And he lost over $1 billion a year because rats were eating the cash he hid. But he didn't care, because more money was coming every single hour. But Pablo wasn't the only drug lord in Colombia. There was another rising cartel, the Cali Cartel. They were smarter, more quiet, more patient. But Pablo, he believed in control, not peace. So he started to fight. He ordered attacks, bombings, assassinations. If a police officer arrested one of his men, he killed them. If a judge sentenced someone from his cartel, the judge disappeared. Pablo had a rule: plata o plomo, silver or lead. It meant, take my money or take my bullet, and most people took the money. He had an army of soldiers, hitmen, lawyers, accountants, politicians, and even police officers who worked for him secretly. He had created a shadow government, a second Colombia ruled by fear and money. But Pablo wanted more than money. He wanted respect. He wanted to be seen as a leader, not just a criminal. So in 1982, he entered politics. He joined a small political party and ran for Congress. And surprisingly, he won. Yes, a drug lord became an official member of the Colombian government. He gave speeches, he wore suits, he promised to help the poor, and he even dreamed of becoming president one day. But many people in the government knew the truth. One of them was a brave man named Rodrigo Lara Bonilla, the Minister of Justice. Rodrigo spoke out. Pablo Escobar is not a leader. He is a murderer, a criminal, a drug trafficker. And Pablo? He felt humiliated. No one had ever said those words about him. Not in public. So one night in 1984, as Rodrigo Lara was driving home, gunmen on motorcycles pulled up. They opened fire. Rodrigo was killed instantly. That killing changed everything. The government finally opened its eyes. Pablo Escobar was not just a politician. He was the biggest criminal in the world. The people were scared. The rich moved to other countries. The poor stayed silent. And Pablo, he declared war. He bombed police stations. He placed car bombs in cities. He ordered the killing of judges, journalists, mayors, even presidential candidates. From 1984 to 1993, over 4,000 people were killed in violence related to Pablo Escobar. He even placed a bomb inside a passenger airplane, killing 107 innocent people, just to kill one man he believed was a spy. The world was now watching. The United States sent the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration. Colombian police built special task forces. New laws were created. Pablo became enemy number one. But he still had power, because the poor still loved him. Now let's talk about something strange. Pablo Escobar, the killer, the criminal, was also a father and husband. He married a woman named Maria Victoria when she was just 15. He was 26. They had 2 children. Juan Pablo Escobar later changed his name to Sebastián Marroquín. Manuela Escobar, his daughter. He gave them everything. His daughter loved unicorns, so he built a life-size unicorn for her birthday. Once the police were hunting him in the jungle. His daughter was cold. So Pablo took $2 million in cash and burned it in a fire just to keep her warm. He told his son bedtime stories, played with him in the garden, built a house just for his kids to play in. But the moment he left the house, he became a killer again. This double life made him more dangerous. He could smile at home and order a bombing in the next room. Year was 1991. Colombia was bleeding. Bombs had exploded in cities. Politicians were dead. Police officers were buried. People were scared to walk outside. And in the middle of all this fear, one man still had power: Pablo Escobar. But the government was under pressure. The United States was watching. The people were shouting, "Do something, stop the violence." So the Colombian government made a deal that shocked the world. They told Pablo, "Stop the war, stop the bombs, and we won't send you to the US, but you must go to prison here in Colombia." And Pablo said, "Fine, but I will build the prison myself." They agreed. Yes, the government let a drug lord build his own prison. And what he built was not a prison. The prison was called La Catedral. But it didn't look like a prison. It looked like a luxury resort on a mountain. It had a giant living room with leather sofas, pool tables, satellite TV, a bar, a waterfall, a gym, a jacuzzi, beautiful views of the city below. It even had a private disco club where Pablo invited his friends, women, and music bands. He slept in a king-sized bed, wore soft pajamas, and ate food made by his personal chef. There were no guards from the government. Only his men were allowed inside. If police tried to enter, they were stopped by armed cartel members outside the gates. La Catedral was not a prison. It was a fortress, a palace, a place where Pablo continued running his drug empire without fear. Even though he was in prison, Pablo was still the boss of the Medellin Cartel. He continued, giving orders, sending drugs across borders, killing enemies, collecting money, meeting with cartel leaders. From his office inside the prison, he made phone calls. He signed deals. He punished traitors. Once, he invited 2 cartel members who had stolen money from him. He brought them inside La Catedral, offered them drinks, smiled. Then he tortured them and had them killed inside the prison walls. Their bodies were never found. Even inside prison, no one was safe from Pablo. At first, the Colombian government pretended everything was okay. They said, "Look, Pablo is in prison. The violence has stopped." But after some months, news started leaking. Journalists reported Pablo was running the cartel from inside. He had full control. He was receiving guests and holding parties. He had killed people inside the prison. The United States was furious. They said, "This is not justice. This is a joke." Under international pressure, the Colombian president, Cesar Gaviria, made a decision. He sent special forces to move Pablo to a real prison. But Pablo found out before they arrived. He called his most trusted bodyguards. He gave quick orders. And on a foggy night in July 1992, Pablo escaped. After escaping La Catedral, Pablo disappeared. He knew the jungle. He knew the mountains. He had safe houses, secret tunnels, and hundreds of people willing to help him. The government searched everywhere. Helicopters flew over forests. Roads were blocked. Phone lines were tapped. But Pablo was gone. He moved at night. He never stayed in one place too long. He used young boys as messengers, old women as lookouts, and priests as contacts. The man who had once ruled a country was now hiding like an animal. But he was still dangerous. He ordered car bombs. He killed anyone he thought had betrayed him. He paid cash to the poor for protection. He continued to control what little was left of the Medellin Cartel. Now the war was no longer just Colombia versus Escobar. It was the entire world. The U.S. sent special units to help catch him. They worked with the search block, a Colombian military unit created just to find Escobar. But that wasn't the only problem for Pablo. A new group had formed. Los Pepes, short for Perseguidos por Pablo Escobar. People persecuted by Pablo Escobar. This was a secret death squad. It was made of enemies of Pablo, families of victims, former police officers, even some members of the Cali cartel. They began killing Escobar's people, burning their houses and leaving warning notes. Los Pepes didn't care about laws. They only wanted one thing: revenge. Now Pablo wasn't just being hunted by the government. He was being hunted by everyone. Pablo's family was suffering. His wife and children were moved to a secret location. They had no phones, no freedom, and lived in fear every day. His son, Juan Pablo, later said, "We were trapped in a golden prison. We were safe from others, but not from the pain." Pablo was alone most of the time. He used old radios to communicate. He changed locations constantly. He stopped trusting even his closest men. He was losing control. Money was harder to move. His men were dying. His enemies were growing stronger. And his face was now on every wall, every news channel, every wanted poster. In December 1993, Pablo was tired. He had been hiding for 17 months. He was no longer powerful. He was running out of options. His empire had crumbled. The year was 1993. Pablo Escobar was no longer a king, no longer a businessman, no longer even a full man. He was tired, lonely, paranoid, and weakened. His enemies were closing in from all directions. His money was stuck. His people were disappearing. His power was broken. But the most dangerous part? He still had pride. Pablo had been running for over 500 days. He moved from one house to another, changing location every few nights. Most of these places were old apartments in middle-class neighborhoods. Small, quiet, and safe-looking from the outside. The house where Pablo stayed on December 2nd, 1993, was on Calle 93, in the city of Medellin. It was a 2-story home. Simple, no big security, no guards at the door, just Pablo and his most loyal bodyguard, Álvaro de Jesús Agudelo, also known as El Limón. Pablo chose this house for a reason. It was ordinary, and in this moment, he wanted to disappear into the crowd. But he made one final mistake. That morning, Pablo Escobar woke up before sunrise. He was nervous. His beard had grown longer. His hair was messy. He looked like a different man. He didn't eat much. He sat silently in a chair, looking out of the window, watching the city he once ruled. Then, around 9 a.m., he picked up the phone. He called his son, Juan Pablo, who was in hiding with his mother and sister. The call lasted just a few minutes. They spoke in code language to avoid being tracked. He told his son, "Take care of your mother. Be strong. This will all be over soon." It was not a long call. It was not emotional. But it was a call from a father who knew he was running out of time. And he didn't know that the search block, the special Colombian police team, was listening. They had tracked his location using radio triangulation technology. 3 antennas around the city had detected the signal. And now, They knew exactly where Pablo was hiding. The search block didn't waste time. By 12:30 p.m., 8 vehicles carrying over 50 armed officers began moving toward Calle 93. Leading the operation was Colonel Hugo Martinez, the man who had hunted Pablo for years. He had worked with U.S. Delta Force, the DEA, and CIA. But this final mission was all Colombian. They wore plain clothes, used unmarked cars, moved quickly, quietly, without any sound. As they approached the house, Pablo and El Limon were still inside, unaware that death was only minutes away. Suddenly, Pablo heard a noise. It was small, maybe the sound of a radio, maybe a footstep. He walked to the window and saw men moving outside, slowly and carefully. He didn't panic, but he knew. He looked at El Limon and said, "We have to go now." They ran to the back room and climbed out of a small bathroom window that led to the red-tiled rooftop of the building. The sun was strong, the rooftop was hot, and the city was quiet. Too quiet. But the police were already there. Pablo and El Limon ran across the rooftops, jumping from one house to another. They thought they could escape, like they had many times before. But this time, there was no way out. Officers surrounded the area. Snipers took position. Guns were aimed. A voice shouted, "Está ahí, he's there, move!" Gunshots began. El Limon was hit first. He fell to the rooftop dead, his blood running down the tiles. Pablo kept running. He was shot once, in the leg, then in the torso, but he kept moving. He fell near the edge of the rooftop. Then came the final bullet, a shot that went through his right ear and out the other side of his head. That bullet ended the story of Pablo Escobar at exactly 1:20 p.m. He died just one day after his 44th birthday. His body lay there, silent, still, no longer powerful. The police walked up to the rooftop. They looked at him. They checked his pulse. He was gone. They took photos, smiled. Some even celebrated. Because for them, this was the end of a nightmare. After more than 10 years of war, bombings, and death, Pablo Escobar was dead. The news spread like fire. TVs showed his picture. Radios shouted, "The king of cocaine is dead. Pablo Escobar has been killed. Colombia is free." The people in power cheered. The government said, "Justice has been done." The United States said, "We are proud to have supported this mission." But in the streets of Medellin, something else was happening. Thousands of poor people cried. Yes, cried. Because for them, Pablo Escobar was more than a criminal. He had built homes, hospitals, schools. He had given money, food, medicine. They didn't care about the cocaine. They remembered the man who gave them dignity. Over 25,000 people came to his funeral. The graveyard was full of mothers, children, families, saying goodbye. Some kissed his photo. Some whispered prayers. Some just stood silently. Not sure what to feel. Pablo Escobar's death didn't end drug trafficking, but it ended an era. The Medellin Cartel collapsed. The Cali Cartel rose for a while, then fell too. New gangs appeared. New criminals took over. But none were like Pablo. He had become a myth, a legend, a man who was loved and feared, who could give you money or take your life in 1 second. Today, tourists visit his old homes. TV shows like Narcos tell his story. Books are written, podcasts are made, songs are sung. But the real Pablo Escobar is now buried in a grave with a stone that says, Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria, 1949, 1993. Love cannot be hidden. Pablo Escobar was dead, but his empire was not. His death left behind questions. Big questions, dangerous questions. Who would take his place? Where did all the money go? Would peace finally come? The answers were not simple. Because even after his death, Pablo's shadow was everywhere. When Pablo Escobar fell on that rooftop in December 1993, the world thought it was over. But inside the Medellin Cartel, there was confusion, panic, and fear. Who would lead now? Who would protect them? Who would take revenge? Some cartel members tried to escape the country. Some started fighting each other. Others tried to join the Cali cartel, which was still powerful at that time. And then came the hunters. The government, the police, and most dangerously, Los Pepes, began tracking down anyone connected to Pablo. They burned houses, they attacked families, they wanted no survivors. So even after his death, people kept dying. It was not peace, it was revenge. Where is the money? Pablo Escobar made billions of dollars. Some say more than 30 billion US dollars in total. So when he died, the world asked one question. Where is all that money? And the truth? Even today, nobody knows for sure. Let's understand why. Pablo Escobar didn't keep money in banks. He didn't trust anyone. He hid his cash in walls, ceilings, abandoned houses, fields, plastic drums buried underground, even inside water pipes. His most trusted men would bury the money in secret places, often without maps. Many of them were later killed, and their secrets died with them. Some of the hidden money was found years later. In farms, in forests, in hidden rooms behind fake walls. But most of it, still missing. There are rumors of entire mountains in Colombia hiding millions of dollars. Locals still dig in fields, hoping to find one of Pablo's lost treasure vaults. But till today, more than $10 billion is still unaccounted for. Pablo had trusted many people during his rule, but after his death, those same people turned against each other. Some ran to the police. Others made deals with the US. A few even helped Los Pepes kill other cartel members just to protect themselves. One of his most trusted men, Popeye, John Jairo Velasquez, who had killed hundreds of people for Pablo, surrendered to the authorities. He later said, "When Pablo died, everything we knew was finished. Loyalty ended, survival began. It was now every man for himself." Pablo's wife, Maria Victoria, and their 2 children were in serious danger. Not just from the police, but from cartels, revenge groups, and even former friends. No country wanted to give them asylum. Nobody wanted to accept the family of the world's most feared drug lord. They traveled to Germany, Mozambique, South Africa, Ecuador, Peru, Brazil. All rejected them. Finally, in Argentina, they were allowed to enter, quietly, secretly. They changed their names. Pablo's son, now known as Sebastián Marroquín, tried to live a normal life, but the past always followed him. One day, he opened the newspaper. It said, "Pablo Escobar's family is living in Argentina." He lost his job. His friends stopped talking to him. His life collapsed again. But he did not hide. He wrote a book. He gave interviews. He apologized to the victims of his father's crimes. And he said, "I forgive my father, but I do not forget the pain he caused." Many of Pablo's properties were taken by the government. Hacienda Nápoles, his massive estate with a zoo, airport, and mansions, was turned into a tourist park. Some houses were destroyed. Others were left empty, slowly falling apart. But the people who live near those houses say strange things. They say, "You can hear gunshots at night. You can see shadows on the walls. You feel a heaviness in the air." Some say the spirit of Pablo Escobar still walks there. It may be superstition, or maybe it's just the weight of the pain he left behind. After his death, Pablo Escobar's body was buried. But his name was not. His name continued to live in books, in music, in movies, in stories, in the minds of the poor, in the anger of the rich, in classrooms, in prisons, in politics, everywhere. He became a ghost that never left. Many years after his death, the world was still asking one question. Who was Pablo Escobar really? And the answers came in many forms. In 2015, the Netflix series Narcos was released. It became a global hit. People in over 100 countries watched it. Millions became curious about the man behind the name. After that, more shows, movies, songs, and documentaries followed. Pablo was shown as a criminal mastermind, a loving father, a violent killer, a man full of contradictions. But none of them showed everything, because his story was too big for just one screen. In Pablo's hometown, Medellin, things changed. For years, the city was full of pain. But now, tourists came, not to relax, but to learn. They visited La Catedral, the prison he built, Hacienda Nápoles, now a public zoo and theme park, his grave, where people leave flowers and letters. Some tours were called narco tours. They showed places where Pablo had lived, ruled, killed, and hidden. But this brought a problem. Many Colombians said, "We don't want tourists to admire a criminal. We want them to understand the pain." So the city changed the way tours were given. They made sure people knew, this is not a hero story. This is the story of what Colombia suffered and what Colombia survived. Because for the people who lived through it, Pablo was not entertainment. He was real. Even today, Colombians are divided about Pablo Escobar. Some say, he destroyed lives. He killed thousands. He brought shame to our country. Others say, he helped us when no one else did. He gave us homes, food, and hope. And many say, we just want to forget. But forgetting is not easy, because his face is still printed on t-shirts. His name is still written on walls. His story is still taught in schools and universities. He is still the most searched Colombian name in history. Even people who hate him know this. No one changed Colombia more than Pablo Escobar. After his death, the Medellin Cartel disappeared. The Cali Cartel lasted only a few more years. Mexico became the new center of the cocaine business. Smaller gangs in Colombia continued his business, but without his power. In schools, he is studied as a lesson in criminal networks, a case of political corruption, a study of fear, power, and economics. His name is now found in college courses, in rap songs, on perfume bottles, even on restaurants and bars, though most of them change the spelling. It shows one thing clearly. Pablo Escobar is not forgotten. Let's now focus on what really matters. The lessons. Because this is not just a story. It's a mirror of the world we live in. Here are the most powerful lessons his life teaches us. 1. Power without peace destroys everything. Pablo had more money than kings. He controlled judges, politicians, police. But he had no peace. He lived in fear. He died hunted. His family was ruined. Power means nothing if it destroys the people around you. 2. Fear can control a country. But only for a while. For years, Pablo ruled Colombia through fear. People stayed silent, but fear doesn't last forever. In the end, fear turns to anger, and anger brings collapse. 3. You can be loved and hated at the same time. He gave homes to the poor. He killed children of the rich. He fed hungry people. He placed bombs in hospitals. He was not black or white. He was both. And that's why the world is still confused by him. 4. Your choices will follow your family. Pablo's son did nothing wrong. But for years, he was blamed. He changed his name. But he couldn't escape the shadow. What you do today will follow your family tomorrow. Make choices you won't be ashamed of. 5. Criminal empires always fall. No matter how big, no matter how rich, no matter how smart, every criminal empire ends in death, jail, fear, or loneliness. Pablo's end was not in a palace. It was on a dirty rooftop, running from people he once controlled. That is the truth. Pablo Escobar was not just a drug lord. He was a storm. He was a mystery. He was a lesson the world still doesn't fully understand. He changed Colombia. He changed the drug trade. He changed history. Thank you for watching this full story. We didn't tell this to support him. We didn't tell this to hate him. We told this story to show the truth. Exactly how it happened. Because behind every name in history, there are people, families, pain, and lessons. If this story touched you, if it helped you understand life better, if it helped you improve your English, then please subscribe to this channel so we can keep sharing more real stories, more powerful lessons, and more learning for all of us. Take care of your family. Stay kind. And never forget the lessons of this story. See you in the next video. Goodbye.